Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning if you're in Europe, and good evening if you're in Australia. And welcome. This is the focus group discussion / webinar of RIU. This quarterly event, which is usually held closed doors, is open to the public this time. So due to the prevailing situation here, we hope it helps. We just give a couple of minutes for the people to sign in. Thank you.
What does property mean to you? To us, property isn't just about a plot of land on a map. It represents an opportunity for you to express and exhibit your identity. The worth of a window and the value of a view is more than just a price on a listing, it is the value of that freedom of expression. Be it the next big startup looking to move up the corporate ladder, or an investor looking to diversify his portfolio. Finding that exact listing to express your identity is essential to being comfortable in it. That's where Capital Trust Properties comes in. Paying attention to the details of such diverse markets is a core philosophy for us at Capital Trust Properties. Partnered with major real estate giants like CBRE, Collier, and Knight Frank, we offer unmatched property services, making us the market leaders in what we do. The Capital Trust Holdings Group has 34 subsidiaries with interests in stock brokerage, market research, and asset management. One such subsidiary, Capital Trust Securities, was ranked #1 in Sri Lanka for 2 consecutive years in terms of transaction turnover, brokerage turnover, and number of transactions. Furthermore, at the Asia Property Awards 2017 held in Singapore, Capital Trust Residencies clinched the prestigious awards for Best Condominium Development in Sri Lanka, Best Condominium Development in Colombo, and Best Residential Interior Design in Sri Lanka. In our property development division, we have completed numerous high-end development projects that have been resounding successes. These include the luxury residential properties, Capital Trust Fortress, Capital Trust Thibrigasiaya, and Capital Trust Vajira Road. In our property brokering division, we have an extensive database of over 100,000 listings. These include residential and commercial properties which range from houses and lands to apartments, villas, hotels, and estates located in key cities and suburbs on the island. Moreover, we manage Tier 1, 2, and 3 category apartments along with Grade A and B commercial properties within the island. Our experience in the property development sector has been a major asset in the brokering and evaluation of these listings. As a result, we have been able to consistently present our customers with high-value offerings. At Capital Trust Holdings, we are not just about selling real estate. We are about gratifying your need for creative expression. We make you stand out in the crowd. Trust in us, and we'll repay you with pride and fulfillment.
Good afternoon. I'm Ranjith, Gunatilleke.
Hi, Ranjith. Welcome. I think you know everybody. Jules from PropertyGuru Awards and Events, Minoli from Capital Trust, and Hiroshini from RIL, Nirmal, PropertyGuru and Paramount Realty, and yourself. Yes.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. I think we have people online joined us. So just give a quick introduction to why we're doing this and what it is. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning if you're in London or Europe, and good evening if you're in Australia or thereabouts. This is the quarterly focus group discussion of Research Intelligence Unit, RIU. This quarter, because of the difficult situation facing Sri Lanka, the difficult economic situation, we've had a lot of requests from our clients to perhaps make a statement or to give some guiding notes. So based on the request, we have decided to keep this focus group open and online, so there are people joining us from different parts of the world as well as Sri Lanka in order to listen to experts that we have on the panel here. It's not exactly a webinar, so we don't really have a very formal structure, and a lot of the pomp that's associated and the formalities are not needed. And of course, another reason why we're doing this is that it's very important that we are open and share information and knowledge of the market with the people. As a company, we believe that access to information is a pillar of a fair and just free market economy. And to that extent, we'd like to make our little contribution. So I will start off by making a quick presentation on the situation where we are at the moment. Right. So can everyone see my screen? Yeah. Right. A quick overview of the economy. I think one word sums it up, and that is inflation. It's actually a global phenomenon that we predicted during COVID, because pretty much every nation under the sun was printing money. Can you check if the screen has been shared properly? Yeah. So you can see here the consumer price, the Colombo price, consumer price index, and the national consumer price index has all gone through the roof in the past month, and it's pretty much the same with the food index, which is alarming because obviously people have to eat, and we've seen almost like a 50% rise in food cost. Non-food inflation is 22%. Alcohol and tobacco is comparatively affordable. Good news for some. Footwear, gas, fuel, electricity has only edged up 8.1% in Sri Lanka. Health inflation 19%, but I think in the health sector, it's not just affordability but access, where there's many people without access to medicine, which is really essential. Transport inflation has literally gone through the roof because that's 68.2%, and that's really driven by the fuel price, and availability has also been a very serious issue here in Colombo and all over the island. Restaurants and hotels, 37. Yeah, so inflation it has been ravaging all over the economy. And similarly, what we've seen is the plunging of the rupee, and we feel it's a man-made disaster, and it's more of a locally man-made disaster as opposed to inflation, because you see here that the currency has been held artificially for such a long time, allowing a lot of space for the illicit trade in currency, and that's really what's resulted in the next slide, which shows you the real problem why the country or why the government is bankrupt, is the complete depletion of foreign reserves. I'm just doing this recap more for people, non-Sri Lankans, because many of you on the panel are probably too familiar with what's been happening. Gold reserves have hit the floor, and total foreign reserves have just continued to slide, unfortunately. At the same time, interest rates, which were lowered during the pandemic, have now edged up again in an attempt by the new central bank governor to stabilize the currency. Share prices, again, they somewhat reflect the macroeconomic situation. Purchasing Price Managers Index, which is the perception index, I think is at an all-time low. Tourism, which is really showing a lot of signs of promise earlier in the year. I was speaking to the tourism board head, and then she was saying that we're getting 2,000-3,000 people a day, but unfortunately that has dropped because of the protest. However, we are optimistic that things may pick up here. Before we move on to the real estate industry specifically, we just summarize what's happened, how we got here as short-term blunders of populist election promises like tax cuts, unrealistic switch to organic agriculture, a totally unrealistic pegging of currency, which actually just spurred a illicit non-banking sector inflow of currencies, which meant a lot of loss of revenue, general mismanagement, and of course we've had numerous white elephant projects which haven't delivered any kind of return. We put that short term in the context of serious long-term issues of the economy, which is about governance, the political landscape, a lot of corruption, huge amounts of leakage. It's a country that should by right be rich, and everyone here should be wealthy, but unfortunately not. The sum of the parts don't add up to the total. We got horrendously inefficient state-owned enterprises. We've always had exports at only half of what the country imports, policy inconsistency, lack of planning, and an illicit trade that inevitably loses a lot of tax revenue for the government. And we put that in an external environment, global inflation, Chinese slowdown, pandemic responses which are really inconsistent all over Asia. some countries trying to pursue a zero COVID policy. Hoping some of you can shed more light on that later, and the general slowdown of FDI. And of course, we have the food security issues because of sanctions on Russia. So what we want to touch on today, the real estate industry specific, but in the context of what Sri Lanka is looking at, the IMF program, perhaps reform, privatization, certainly inflation, which is not going to go away soon, a sovereign rating that's going to make it more expensive for the country to borrow in the international market, very likely tax cuts, and what we're seeing now are long queues at the passport office. So probably a lot of outward migration. So we're going to discuss the real estate industry, hopefully in the context of the economy, and perhaps arrive at some kind of a consensus and maybe even some policy recommendations. So just to perhaps make people feel a bit more comfortable, we are not alone. Inflation is at record levels all over the world, Europe, America, etc. Again, primarily because of money printing during the pandemic. And here we are again, one of the main reasons why transport inflation is topping the list of inflationary areas. Now, I'm just going to hand the presentation over to our analyst Sunit from our real estate research section, who will run you through specific real estate sectors.
Thank you, Roshan, sir. Let me first take you to the real estate weighted average. Average apartment prices showed a decline from Q4 2021 due to the depreciation of LKR. However, in Colombo, compared to Q3 and Q4 of 2021, Tier 1 average apartment selling prices had increased by 3.7% in the first and second quarter of 2022. When compared to overall trends in property prices for apartments, these fluctuations are evidence of the continuous improvements in property demand in Colombo City. When consider the absorption rates by tier, during the first quarter of 2022, apartment sales in Colombo jumped up because the foreign traffic increased by over 20%, especially after the government started floating the rupee in the open market. Most of the diaspora visitors are from the United States, UK, Australia, Canada, and UAE, and many have been on the lookout for apartments for sale in Colombo. Tier 1 and 3 apartments showed a considerable apartment amidst the economic crisis compared to the Tier 2. Colombo apartment rental values have increased up to 1.64 USD per square foot in the first quarter of 2022 from 1.62 USD per square foot in the previous quarter in 2021. Average rental yields have increased from 4.5 in the previous quarter to 5.5% in the first quarter of 2022. Let me take you to commercial real estate market in Sri Lanka. Demand in the market was predominantly driven by the IT and financial services. A strong supply pipelines in the market by the amidst the prevailing interest rate environment. You can see the difference between the absorption rates from Q4 to Q1 of 2022. Prices, monthly lease rates, and the absorption rates in prime and non-prime areas in Colombo. Moving on to retail market in Sri Lanka. Spending in the market has been declined with the drastic impact. Shopping malls, retail stores, clothing shops. Textiles has been reduced due to reduction of tourism. Dutch Hospital, Colombo City Center, and Independence Arcade, the occupancy rates of the retail malls Sri Lanka, most of them are stable. Colombo City Centre and One Golf Face showed increase. Moving on to hotel sector, Sri Lanka. Average room rates of the hotels stood between 100 to 140 USD per night. Occupancy rates of the same area were below 50% during the first quarter of 2022. When considering the Bay Island markets, residential land prices in Colombo were recorded at 11.74 million per perch in the beginning of 2022. And the other areas, the suburban areas, the land prices increased by 20% in the Q1 of 2022 compared to Q4 of 2021. Here are the monthly average prices per perch USD. Colombo 2, Colombo 7, Colombo 10, and Colombo 13 showed a drastic decline in USD, but the LKR rates remain increasing as usual. And suburban land prices showed a decline in Battaramulla, Kiribathgoda, Mount Lavinia, and Rajagiriya when priced by USD. Yeah. Industry outlook will be presented by Prashant.
Thank you, Sunit. Yes, thank you, Sunit. I think it's very important to note that we were planning to show you the rates in LKR as opposed to USD. The rates in LKR have continued to increase, as you see there. The land price index in suburban areas in the LKR have risen more further than the average trend, which is a good sign for real estate. But of course, in dollars, it has declined. So obviously, if you're earning in foreign currency, there's never been a better time. Similarly, the suburbs, you can see that in rupee prices, the per perch prices have continued to increase during the economic crisis, whereas the US dollar rates have fallen. So what is the impact on real estate? We know that in addition to domestic demand, remittances and diaspora have driven the market at various segments. The buy-to-live market is less affected by real estate. And it's a seller's market at the moment, is what we get as a feedback. And there's a preference to hold physical assets than and cash. And the interest rate hike has had some effect, but probably not as much as you might expect. And the commercial environment probably makes it very attractive for multinationals. So that's it from us. That's the hard data. So we would now turn to the panel for some industry insights and expertise. We're very fortunate to have an extremely learned panel here today. So I will kick off with some individual questions to the panelists, and then we'll open it up to the people who've joined us online. Sorry, I just add that people who are online, please do send your questions in, because after we have a round of a structured discussion, we will address individual concerns of people. Right. I will start by asking my first question to Mr. Ranjith, who's the chairman of Sanken. Ranjith, many people have really told us about the challenges faced by your industry. When can we expect to see the construction sector in Sri Lanka kickstart things again a bit? And what is the situation now, and what can we expect in the next 12 months?
Thanks. First, I will correct myself. I'm the CEO of Sanken Construction, not the chairman, but I'm the president of the construction chamber. so that I know exactly what is happening in the construction industry, whether it's the consultancy role or the property developers role or the contractors role in the construction industry. Right now, no one wants to talk about the construction. They are who are involved with construction industry, because you can't keep anything in the, whether it is in the prices or other logistics, what is possible. I'm not negative, but that's the reality. Because if you try to source materials, you know, in the construction industry, generally about 20-25% materials only maximum local materials. And there is about 10% of the materials, it's halfway value added before it's finally placed in the construction. Then the nearly 60% of the materials, machinery, equipment, all those are totally imported. Now the import of construction materials, tools, equipment has come to a completely stop. That is, as all of us know, it is because of the dollars issue of the foreign exchange. And if you go into detail, even the foreign exchange, that the foreign exchange earners of the construction industry, unfortunately, as per the central bank regulations, they are unable to take the foreign exchange out in order to develop more foreign exchange. This is, I'm telling in public, but that's the reality as per the today's law, as per the central bank rules. Then number two, if you have dollars, the development, whether it is the infrastructure development or the urban development, which involves housing and other developments, for all these items, you have to have dollars, because hardly anything that we developed or produce or manufacture in Sri Lanka. Today, all that has come to a standstill, because the construction industry, unless we create some foreign exchange or the dollars, once you bring it to Sri Lanka and use it, got to be stopped immediately. And the industry people understand that very well. For example, the creation of a resort or the hotel, which will in turn open it for tourism and can earn some foreign exchange, then such development or the construction is okay. But any other development at the moment, putting up even the housing, even the apartments, it's part of the development, but that doesn't create any foreign exchange into the country. So that all these things has come to a stop. But there are two ways. One is, especially the private sector, they think twice before they put their funding or the investment to apartments or the condominium projects, because they think, because there is no restriction of selling apartments for diaspora or the foreign nationals in Sri Lanka, they welcome that. But when the economy is not good, related with the political stability is not there, then the private sector don't see that investment is a worthwhile investment. But when you take the public sector, in the construction, 70 to 80% has now come to a stop. Very soon, the balance. One is the exchange. Number two is the public sector, totally due to the failure of public sector management. I'm not going to go into detail, but I could simply say the public sector, it has now very obvious, as you use the word corruption and various other things, but I'm not going to dig into detail, but it's totally because when the public sector investment no one is serious about whether such projects are physically or financially viable, and also whether the recovery is within a certain period. So this is the situation of the construction industry today in this country. So industry stakeholders, they like to be a bit silent. They are very much affected, but got to be silent at least for the next 6 months. The main issue is getting the economic situation stable, and the most difficult is whether the political stability is gained within next 2 months. That I am concerned with the full responsibility as an engineer, as the CEO of Sanken, and also as the president of the chamber. I'm telling you because these things were up to yesterday discussed seriously with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjith. Can I just ask, even the affordable housing, does it still have a very significant percentage of imported material? I know that obviously the high-end apartments do, but the more essential social housing, does that still require a high degree of imports?
Yes, that's what, when you see, other than the metal and sand, even for affordable housing, there's a few value-added items like the ceramic ware and these things, but it's not worthwhile of commenting, but all imported. If you take it, the metal, what you use for concrete, one is cement. Cement is either value-added cement or other cements are imported. Then when you take admixtures and the metal, the explosives that you bring in, and all machinery used in the creating metal in the quarry sites, the tires, spares, everything is imported. And only the water that we use for concrete, something locally. But other items, if you take it for sand, you take sand from the sand pits or from the river at zero value, only the loading value. But when it comes to Colombo, especially, or the other cities, right? Today, a cube of sand is 23,000 rupees, right? So all that is added cost because of the vehicles that they transport them, then diesel and other expenses. That is, and also the serious thing is various permits that you got to take from various departments. That is also a cost. Earlier it was not a cost, it's a cost now, right? That is that. Then else you can get all the steel that you use are not imported. The billets are imported, manufactured here, and value addition is not much, right? So it's sometimes you could get direct imports for steel, maybe the same price that we pay here, right? Then all the other whatever is coming there, say if it is timber doors, right? What is the timber doors? All timber we import. Then you go for elevators, import, generators, import. This is, I'm talking about affordable housing. Then you do, right round you do asphalt, import. Everything is imported. But the problem is industry must see, there's nothing that we could do with local material, right?
Right. Thanks, Ranjith. So that's quite a serious situation faced. So I think, wait and see was your message. Right. Turning to Yasas, who's the CEO of Homelands, a leading developer in apartments and gated communities in Sri Lanka. Yasas, can we ask you what has been the impact on the residential sector that you guys operate in so far, particularly this year, in the wake of the economic crisis? Over to you, Yasas.
Okay, thank you, Roshan, and good afternoon to everybody. So I think we'll start the discussion with quite a bigger picture. So if you're really concerned about the population growth, we will be reaching 25 million population in 2030. So in order to bridge the housing deficit, we need to construct 100,000 residential units per annum. But so far, we have been constructing 25,000 units per annum. So that means by 2 to 3 years down the line, we'll be facing an undersupply situation in residential units. So this is all together with apartments and gated housing and individual housing and all that we are building 25,000 units per annum. And then if you really see the, Mr. Gunatilleke very clearly expressed about the material costs. And if you really see the situation that we encountered on post-COVID situation, you know, house construction cost for a 2,000 square foot house has been increased by 5 million LKR. But it compares to, you know, after that, in March 2022, it was a further increase. And as an example, for cement has gone by 95% compared to pre-situation and post-situation March 2022, and the steel has gone up to 115% of what it was, and concrete by 90%, as so on. And due to that, actually now construction industry or the development sector is facing huge problem of catering to the demand of the country. So that means this annually we constructing like 25,000 units also been dropped to a bare minimum. And due to that, due to very high construction cost, individuals are refrained from constructing houses on their own. So they are attracted to more or less complete houses. So if you really see the consumer perspective or the customer's perspective, now we see now people are pushed towards real estates because they don't have any other alternatives to invest. We know generally people are attracted for real estate, 65% for investment purpose and 35% for the residential purpose right at the moment. And another interesting fact is that investing in real estate has a very least risk involvement, and also that investment can hedge the inflation. So you know that with the inflation of nearly around 35%, so the investment in monetary assets hold very low intrinsic value. So with that, as an example, if a person is buying from buying an apartment, so he can assure ROI more than 25 to 30%, but in addition to that, he can get a rental income year round. So we should not forget the fact that because these apartments are much more popular due to rental, because it's been rented for tourists. We are a country that we got tourist arrivals 250,000 in February 2019. So those are sort of things. And we will now look at the buying power of customers. That is a major issue to be discussed in terms of residential real estate. So we have, as an example, let's look at the salaried employees in Sri Lanka. So we have 4.1 million salaried employees, where 2.6 million works in private sector and 1.5 million works in public sector. So out of the 2.6 million people in private sector, 25% already has an issue with their remuneration. Some people are jobless and some lost their jobs. Some people have reduced their income and so on. So the disaster here is now with overwhelming reductions of their income. So they will not jump into big investments or residential buying. So we'll look at the other part of the tiers. That means like we have 40,000 HNIs, high net worth individuals in our country, who are maintaining a liquid asset portfolio around about 125 million at any given time, and they are interested of buying residential solutions, apartments or houses above 50 million with outright payments. And if you get into the next tier, that is upper mid-income group, we have around 100,000 people in that particular tier. They are interested of buying 30 to 50 million assets with easy payment scheme. They are maintaining monthly income of nearly 1 million LKR. So now, you know, in the 10th March, the crisis situation, you know, compared to that, so we experience a rupee depreciation against the dollar 75%, and the subsequent inflation around 30%. And due to that, there's a severe reduction in their disposable income and the buying power, and the buying sentiment also been reduced. And so now we experience now those people, there's a wait and see kind of situations. And then that may be the one reason where the residential sales were dropped by 60% after March 2022. And now, if you really see diaspora, now we have 2.1 million people in diaspora, where out of which 140,000 people are interested of buying a residential solution from Sri Lanka, Colombo and suburbs within next 3 years. And with the devaluation of rupee, their buying sentiment has increased because their buying power has been increased. So other factor for diaspora is if they keep the money in their country, the savings, they might get maximum 1 to 2% return ROI per annum. But if you invest that in Sri Lankan real estate, they can get around 25 to 30% ROI per annum. So that may be really attractive despite the inflation. So that is why, and people are attracted from the diaspora. So now, if you really see, now the market is bit slowed down, the construction is bit slowed down, because if you really see the Sri Lankan construction altogether, it contributes 4.3 billion USD for the GDP, where that nearly 1 million people are involved in it. So, so then if the situation is not going to sort it out soon, there might be certain disaster situations coming up in we can expect to come in these sectors. And I think as the discussion is navigating the storm, I think I focus a bit about what we should do. Now we have experienced what has happened, and I have take you through some of the areas that with numbers, what has happened to that, and we'll see what are the things that we can do to come out of the situation as a country, as individuals and all that.
Yasas, shall we return to the solution? Because like we're going to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just a quick one. You mentioned the diaspora who are investing, and until, as far as I know, diaspora could bring the money in through the SAI account and take money out again. Just for the audience and some of us as well, is that still the case? Can the diaspora still invest and take the money out, or is that changed because of the crisis?
Yeah, they can invest. No problem.
Right. Thanks. Thank you, Yasas. So I'm going to pose the same question to Minoli. Minoli is on the front line. It's got 2 caps in transactions as well as a developer. So what's your feedback? What's your take on the residential market, Minoli? Minoli, you have to unmute. Yeah.
So I have always been very bullish on the real estate sector in Sri Lanka. You must have known from my previous sessions. I still are, but I feel we'll have a bumpy ride. So mainly because we are actually part of this, we are in a strategic location where we are also part of the China's One Belt, One Initiative. And I think China has not given up on us. So they're just waiting to see what's going on. And also we also have interest from the two other superpowers, India and US. We have had a period of economic and political instability. It's not when the COVID hit. Even before, prior to that, we had a period of economic and political instability with the Easter attacks. So the real estate sector has been stagnant then as well. Then after COVID, with the interest rates decreasing, we have actually to single digit interest rates, we have actually seen a drastic increase in real estate, built-in real estate, especially apartments from 2021, right? But in terms of development, we actually did a BOQ and then we found it not attractive, in the sense we were seeing the inflationary pressures coming in as early as that. So if you we were actually since we are in the financial sector, we've been doing extensive studies, and we've been always saying there's going to be high inflationary pressures. So we knew that it was not the right time to get into construction. So we actually, our strategy was on construction to wait and see. So what was built was finished just before the COVID hit us. And then we kept the BOQs and waited to see if things were getting better, which wasn't the case. So rightfully, we have actually held on to our portfolio of apartments as well, in our own apartments, because we saw that there will be an increase, because we anticipated a shortage as well coming in. And actually during the worst part of the economic crisis, I might say, when the currency was fully floated and we saw the currency depreciate like mad, and the prices, we actually revised prices, and we stopped selling most of our inventory. And by March, April, we also saw a lot of our investors buying bulk purchases of what was left on tier one apartments. So unlike others, we saw about 200, 300 apartments being sold around that time alone. And a lot of the built-in commercial spaces also been bought up by very intelligent investors, because we saw the cost of construction going up. And as you see, there is a global inflationary pressure because of the Ukraine-Russian war, then the fuel prices globally increasing, then the supply chain being disrupted. And also we have an artificial inflationary pressure. That is because all the subsidies have been removed. So that, I think no one addressed it, but we are facing that, where now realistic prices are coming in, because the country doesn't have money to subsidize anymore, which in a way is good, because the inefficiencies will be wiped out, and probably social net will be introduced for the poorer population, and maybe it will be much more sustainable going forward, because fuel is a imported, I mean, much of our resources are imported. So that is the reason we are in this situation, I feel. Also.
Thank you, Minoli. Yes, it's, as you said, optimistic industry, and
Yes.
and there's hope for a new beginning. Yes.
Yes, so I feel it will be a bumpy ride, but with the construction cost, as Mr. Ranjith was saying, there is no way that you can start construction right now and finish it, because the costs are very, very volatile. So you can't really cost your apartments. Actually, we have asked developers to see if they can price for at least foreigners and tourists in in US dollars, peg it to US dollars, the pricing of apartments as well as renters, because you see the cost always rising and we can't afford to price it in rupees anymore. We have come to that sort of situation.
Yes, because of the volatility level and the uncertainty.
Yes,
sure.
and I don't think the inflation will keep on going to sort of a hyperinflation situation, because we are still seeing money being printed. So that was the start of it.
Yeah.
So
just very quickly, Minoli, from a transactions point of view, are people holding on to property rather than hold on to LKR, or are
yes,
people
definitely.
are they distressed sales?
I think what happened was in March, April was the worst time, where there was the depreciation. People didn't know where the currency was heading. So to keep the value of your money, they had to hedge it. So it's a good hedge. So obviously, property is the safest hedge. And then, since we are in stockbroking, we were also recommending dollar-based shares, where 95% of the companies out of the country and earns in dollars and are not affected by the Sri Lankan economy. But those only very intelligent, knowledgeable investors would go into. So the next asset class, which a lot of people know, is the real estate. So that had a huge demand. To my opinion, a lot of the tier 1 apartments have been bought up, and what is remaining is the ones in the secondary market.
Thank you, Minoli. We'll return to that. Now I'm going to turn to commercial real estate, which has been recovering from the pandemic, only to face the current economic crisis. We have two experts on that. I'll start with Dr. Nirmal. What are your thoughts, Nirmal, on the commercial real estate landscape at the moment? Nirmal is the chairman of PropertyGuru and the founding CEO of Paramount Realty. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Roshan. I want to all of you all. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with such a wonderful industry experts. So I think in terms of commercial real estate, you're spot on, Roshan. I think from Easter Sunday attacks onwards, we've been seeing somewhat of a volatility in the demand for commercial real estate. More and more organizations have been looking at flexible workspace options. They've been trying to optimize and make their workspaces more efficient. And then with the pandemic, we've seen the work from home methodology coming into place. And more larger multinational organizations have also been looking at scaling down their operations. But if you look at published data and so forth, there has been certain improvements in Q4 last year on the vacancy, but the economic impact can be really seen. I think there's a common consensus towards the end of this year. So I think from commercial real estate developers and operators, I think they need to relook at their business model. For far too long, I think landlords have been looking at it in a very traditional sense, looking at what are their rental yields, what are their costs. So much so that if you compare Sri Lanka with some of the regional peers and how they reacted proactively towards the COVID impact. I think Sri Lankan commercial real estate players have been very late to the game in terms of trying to provide more flexible options to retain the good customers, and also looking at how they can convert underutilized space. If they have a retail component as well in their building, how that can be converted into co-working space, etc., has been something that Sri Lankan landlords have not been too keen. Of course, I do understand that if you are a premier A grade building and you also quoted company, you have certain shareholder expectations to meet, but that is in terms of your financial numbers. But in terms of having the right mix of tenants, what it used to be prior to the pandemic and prior to Easter Sunday, is something that the players will need to re-look into. My overview on this is that just like we talk about the One Belt, One Road initiative, our close proximity to India, the geopolitical scenario means that if we take a classic example, if you take the Indian scenario, in the next 8 years, India is going to have half of their population under 30 years of age. They've also going to travel around the world for probably the first time in their life out of India. So if you look at a 700 million population plus minus, and you take 1% of that visiting Sri Lanka and trying to explore a business opportunity, you see the potential opportunity for retail, you see the potential opportunity for residential real estate, and it goes without saying on the commercial side. Our technology domain is performing well. I think with the pandemic, Sri Lankan software companies and IT BPO companies have got more and more orders. I think they are progressing well with their industry forecast. So other things being equal, there is about a 4 million square foot requirement in the next 5 years. But the problem here, Roshan, is, and this is the $1 million problem. Sadly, our opinion is that most of the commercial real estate players have been very focused on B plus or A grade buildings. I think majority of the demand will be coming from B minus or C grade commercial buildings, no frills building with the minimum necessities, close proximity to commercial and transportation hubs. And of course, as you know, most of the tech graduates come from the suburbs of Colombo. So, and they live in boarding houses and so forth, especially after graduation from the local university system. So unless and otherwise you get real estate developers looking at that, sometimes townships per se, like what Malaysia has with Cyberjaya and Cyberview, we may not be able to capitalize on that opportunity because the A grade demand will drop. But nevertheless, if you take a dollar to dollar perspective, Sri Lankan commercial real estate is still cheaper than Pune, Hyderabad, Ho Chi Minh, Kuala Lumpur, and many other cities across the region. So if you are a multinational, provided that you have the macroeconomic stability and political stability, establishing a base in Sri Lanka from a commercial real estate perspective and the facilities management perspective is still cheaper in comparison to our regional neighbors.
Excellent. Thank you, Nirmal. You did mention India, rightly, that even a small percentage would have a huge difference. Is it too early or to ask this question, or have you noticed Indians or indeed multinational companies taking advantage of the dollar to maybe relocate in Colombo, given that we have commercial real estate?
So I think with India, Roshan, we have almost like a sibling rivalry, right? You either love them or hate them. So I think it's never a bad time to get close. I think this is where we need to have a commercial-oriented diplomacy at the moment. Everybody is here. They are also supporting us during these economic times. But if you look at it from a pragmatic perspective, nothing comes free. I think this is the opportunity that we have to really position ourselves, look at how we can collaborate. We got 2 Indian conglomerates within the top 10 companies in the world, and then within the billionaire list as well, just over the last year. Have we really touched the surface with them? The answer is probably not. Do we have more opportunity? And it's overwhelming, yes. But how do we get there? Do we have a strategic plan, or are we living for the day? Is something that time will tell.
Thanks, excellent. Yes, pretty much every Indian client that we encounter relish the idea to relocate in Sri Lanka and live and work here. So yeah, I think that could be a very significant opportunity. Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Nirmal. Hiroshini, over to you. What is your perspective on the market commercial? I know in your capacity as the CEO of RIO Property, owning the Grade A building at Parklands, and in addition to others. So what is your take of the economic crisis thus far on the commercial real estate landscape?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Roshan, for this. I think I tend to agree with all of the speakers up to now, and specifically with regards to what Nirmal was saying of how probably A-grade service suppliers had not adapted into the requirement. I think we have taken a certain stance, and I think Parkland has actually done a lot of changes, which Nirmal was talking about, creating the co-work locations, looking at smaller blocks and all of that. But I think even though we addressed that through the pandemic, the onslaught that we got through the current economic condition, I think is much more damaging than the pandemic actually, because through the pandemic it was a matter of how we would manage our resources, but now almost everything is beyond our control. I think now when Nirmal was talking about getting on maybe the Indian investors to come in, actually under the current circumstances, specifically because we have these power outages, many companies are actually looking whether they should move out, because Roshan, now generator power is not backup power. It's alternate power. And then now for us to power the generators, we need the fuel. There is no way we can easily source the fuel. And then Ranjith was talking about the materials. So all those things, even though we are a built up building, we still need to manage. And the consumables, it is firefighting from the morning till night, because we don't know how to plan for a couple of weeks. And from the smallest consumable like the detergent, we are finding it so difficult to source them. Then in addition to that, now as a lessor, we have contracts with our tenants, and these contracts are legal documents, and we have restrictions on how we can recover certain costs. So technically, the interest rates rising, the opportunity cost of investments, everything has come and hit the commercial space market in such a manner, because now Minoli was saying that they held on to stock, but that is not something that we can do, because there is a certain amount where we really need to have entered into agreements and all of that. So I think if we thought the pandemic was bad, I think this is really, catastrophic as, when we are looking at things. But I suppose as Sri Lankans, we've always found ways of getting through this. So I think, as all the other speakers said, I think our only hope is to ensure that we have the political stability so that we have the confidence of the investors coming in so that we actually have progress happening. I think there was some indication about, I think Roshan, you asked whether through the SIA account, the money that is brought in can be taken out. So I think it's not a restriction of money being taken out. I think the restriction is there is no foreign currency for the money to be taken out. So it's everything is on priority. So priority now is fuel, medicine, and food. So after all of that, only the other requirements is addressed by the bankers. So I think that is the reality that we are living in. So that is how things look from our angle.
Thank you, Hiroshini. That is a very realistic picture of the environment. So operationally, you are having challenges, but I think just in the past few weeks, the fuel queues have eased up, and we expect the next month might be okay. So as you said, political stability. Do you think the fuel situation is the main one, I think, for power generation? That being sorted perhaps in June would ease your problems somewhat in the immediate term.
Yes, and at the same time, since we also have an interest in renewable energy, I can safely say that with the rains coming in, I think the power generation through the hydros should improve, and that would actually bring in some consolation to CEB, I suppose. But then I think with the IMF funding and the negotiations that have been taking place, the much anticipated power the cost increase from CEB is to be, cannot be. I think is very much on the cards. So I think that is where things are going to lead up to, and it's going to be a very expensive per square foot rate that is going to come.
Just quick question. So is there a provision for you to increase and accommodate increases in electricity, which is inevitable now?
It depends
in
on
your
the
contract.
It depends on the contract that we have. Some contracts where we have splitted up the service charge and the rental, yes, we do. The other part is again where we really need to reach out to the client. Like, when the client reached out to us during the pandemic, now we have to reach back to the client, to negotiate with the client and explain to them. But the underlying factor is the client is also going through a tough time.
Yes.
And the other factor, Roshan, is the main impact coming from the interest cost increase. So that is where the main issue is going to come for all developers who are leveraged for their funding. So that is going to escalate now. I think the anticipation is it will go up to about 25% by the end of the year. So how do you do business when you have to pay 25% of your income as interest?
Yeah, indeed. Difficult scenario. Well, the rains are certainly a blessing. So perhaps other things we hope will go our way. We'll return to that and perhaps some opportunities. And Yasas said he has solutions. So I'm looking forward to getting back to him. But first, Jules, who is the MD of PropertyGuru Awards and Events based in Thailand. Thank you so much for joining us amidst our storm and our darkest hour. Jules, thank you for joining.
No problem.
We just thank you. And yeah, from your point of view, and particularly that you're based in Thailand, which went through a very similar situation in the late 90s. Could you offer us some maybe cross-country experience? Is there hope for Sri Lanka? How and can you see how Sri Lankan real estate in particular can emerge out of the current crisis? Over to you, Jules.
Yeah, thanks, Roshan. Thanks for having me on today. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, we run a regional property awards series here where we recognize the best real estate, the best developers in 15 markets around Asia. And despite all the recent challenges, I mean, if you look at Sri Lanka, has been facing multiple challenges, I'd say, since we've been running the awards over the last 5 years. But we have still, through our independent judges, led by our chairman, Dr. Nirmal, who's also on the panel today, we still continue to find, to select, and to award quality property developments in Sri Lanka. And I'm confident that we'll continue to do that not only this year, but in years to come. I think it's about fundamentals. In Southeast Asia, where PropertyGuru is a leading market real estate platform in 5 countries, the focus post-pandemic is very much on market recovery. And I think, you have a very special set of economic challenges at the moment in Sri Lanka. But having visited 7 countries over the last 7 weeks to launch our awards in Southeast Asia, they're also facing their own specific challenges as they emerge from the pandemic, as they respond to the change in lifestyles, in buying habits, in market conditions across the region. So I think with a focus on recovery and a focus on solutions, and as we've heard, with essentially a foundation of a property market that's still moving, I think there is definitely a positive and opportunity to come out of this, in a strong way. And you mentioned, Roshan, Thailand. Now, I've lived here for over 20 years, and we faced some very serious challenges in Thailand back in the financial crisis in 1997, and then again in 2008 when there was a very huge political turmoil. And what happened then was the public and private sectors really found ways to work together to build and amplify what was really a positive message internationally that really focused again on the strategies for recovery. And I'm hearing a lot of that here already. The strategies for recovery already, fermenting. They're already being delivered. They're already being thought through, rather than focusing on what the problems are and what the solutions. And I can hear that. I always hear that from Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka's been a country that's had to come through this many times. And when you think about in Thailand on the economic front, financial restructuring was very swift. They focused on non-performing loans, particularly strengthening the banks, putting in place public asset management corporations so that they could really accelerate the disposition of the non-performing assets. The government adopted a much more export-driven strategy. And all the time they announced this and they promoted this to the international audiences and markets so that they could maintain that link with what were essentially pre-existing international ties. And I think, there are references there to Sri Lanka. You have these pre-existing international relationships that we've heard mentioned, with India, with China, with Europe, with the US. So I think that's something that will be, again, helpful in recovering quickly, because those interests and relationships are already there. And it's just a question of, reviving them and drawing that international investment and interest back to Sri Lanka once things stabilize a little. And on the political front, as soon as the situation stabilized and it became perceived safe in Thailand, after the red shirt, yellow shirt, the fighting on the streets, etc., campaigns were launched very quickly in all the key markets to bring back tourists, to bring back visitors. And that happened very quickly because there's always a need and a desire to travel to the most beautiful countries in the world. And Sri Lanka is one of them. So again, I think that will be crucial as soon as the current situation where it is perceived as unsafe is really largely a media generated scenario from what I can hear. And, you know, once you recover from that and tourism returns, that has a knock-on effect. And I think you've been seeing some resumption of tourist interest already there. So, I mean, there are parallels there in many ways. And it's about tourism, it's about real estate, and it's about relying on the things that were already drivers from an international perspective, and then kind of reinvigorating them through positive messaging and introducing policies and incentives that attract joint venture partners, international large-scale investors from nearby countries, and obviously private buyers looking for second homes, looking for investment properties, and making it as easy as possible, whether that's, you know, international markets that you have traditionally attracted, or whether it's the diaspora bringing their money back into the economy. I think all those things offer huge opportunity once these core woes can be overcome via, you know, more drastic means. But from my perspective, again, yeah, from a regional perspective, these issues, these challenges have been faced before by countries not so far from you. And they've also been overcome quite often through international collaboration. And I think that's another thing. International collaboration is something that Sri Lanka does very well. And I know that from a personal experience, because we've been running the awards there for many years. And Nirmal and yourself, Roshan, and the judges have always had a very open attitude and a very welcoming attitude to international business. And I think that that's something that will also help ride this particular storm, which is relevant to my backdrop. So yeah, I mean, I feel from an outsider looking in, although it's obviously a very drastic and serious situation, the fundamentals haven't changed. And particularly tourism and real estate can ride out these most difficult times and have done before. So I think, you know, reinstilling confidence, positive messaging, and policies that encourage international recovery or international interest will be key to that. So that's my
thank you. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Jules. I was just wondering if this Thailand has you know, reached amazing heights in tourism now. Was that the case in the 90s, or is this like a post-recovery tourism boom? And does Thailand also have a large diaspora to bank on? Or
well, no, they're interestingly not. You see, in Thailand it is very different. I mean, but then from a diaspora point of view, we can look to the Philippines, where we also have you know, a large presence there, and the Philippines is very much driven recovery economically, and they have a very healthy actual international surplus. They're based almost entirely their gross international reserves of 108 billion, much of which comes from the diaspora and the overseas workers. Thailand, no, but Thailand has managed to leverage its international appeal much more quickly in times of crisis. So, you know, we're back down again here in Thailand at the moment. You know, the aim is to get back up to I think it was 45 million tourists that were coming in here, but that was very much reliant on China prior to the pandemic. And now they're quickly pivoting to look at other source markets. So heavily marketing to India, a very big push on the Middle East. And what Thailand's always done is to be able to switch and adapt quickly to external economic influences so that they can maintain that consistent arrival numbers. And arrival numbers on tourism have a direct and immediate impact on real estate investment as well, as we've seen in Thailand over the years. So yeah, it's actually, you know, it hit a peak. The pandemic has now dropped tourism considerably here again in Thailand, but they're quickly looking at solutions to get it back up. And interestingly, another one is this post-pandemic work from anywhere digital nomad approach, where Thailand is now actively marketing itself as a long-term destination for people that want to work remotely, and creating opportunities in real estate for people to invest in affordable, from an international perspective, properties where they can also live and work in places like Phuket, in places like outside of Bangkok, but also in Bangkok. So again, the sectors are adapting within real estate. And then from a marketing and promotion perspective, the country is sending out messages that match the needs of specific groups of people abroad. So I think that's, that's one of the techniques that has worked well in Thailand over the years, irrespective of what's going on at the domestic level.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. And of course, now it's a success story for the IMF, having gone through the structural reforms and etc. And politically, things settled down pretty quickly as well. It's quite a long time ago, but yeah, I was a research assistant at the time, and I remember following the proceedings. But so yeah, as you say, there is hope for Sri Lanka. And as we look around, other countries have been here, it's inevitable that things will improve. We are running over time, but there are quite a few questions from the people who've joined us online. So what we will do is ask people listening in again to send any more questions. Our team is busy putting all the questions together and grouping them to make it easy for the panelists to respond. If you're a panelist, you have enough time to grab a quick cup of tea or coffee. We're just going to play a couple of quick videos. We'll be back in like 2 minutes. Yeah, thank you. I don't come on the video because I'm talking on this thing.
What does property mean to you? To us, property isn't just about a plot of land on a map. It represents an opportunity for you to express and exhibit your identity. The worth of a window and the value of a view is more than just a price on a listing, it is the value of that freedom of expression. Be it the next big startup looking to move up the corporate ladder, or an investor looking to diversify his portfolio. finding that exact listing to express your identity is essential to being comfortable in it. That's where Capital Trust Properties comes in. Paying attention to the details of such diverse markets is a core philosophy for us at Capital Trust Properties. Partnered with major real estate giants like CBRE, Collier, and Knight Frank, we offer unmatched property services, making us the market leaders in what we do. The Capital Trust Holdings Group has 34 subsidiaries with interests in stock brokerage, market research, and asset management. One such subsidiary, Capital Trust Securities, was ranked #1 in Sri Lanka for 2 consecutive years in terms of transaction turnover, brokerage turnover, and number of transactions. Furthermore, at the Asia Property Awards 2017 held in Singapore, Capital Trust Residencies clinched the prestigious awards for Best Condominium Development in Sri Lanka, Best Condominium Development in Colombo, and Best Residential Interior Design in Sri Lanka. In our property development division, we have completed numerous high-end development projects that have been resounding successes. These include the luxury residential properties, Capital Trust Fortress, Capital Trust Thibrigasiaya, and Capital Trust Vajira Road. In our property brokering division, we have an extensive database of over 100,000 listings. These include residential and commercial properties which range from houses and lands to apartments, villas, hotels, and estates located in key cities and suburbs on the island. Moreover, we manage Tier 1, 2, and 3 category apartments along with Grade A and B commercial properties within the island. Our experience in the property development sector has been a major asset in the brokering and evaluation of these listings. As a result, we have been able to consistently present our customers with high-value offerings. At Capital Trust Holdings, we are not just about selling real estate. We are about gratifying your need for creative expression. We make you stand out in the crowd. Trust in us, and we'll repay you with pride and fulfillment.
Right. How do I get back on? Can you hear me? Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. We're back. Quite a few questions here from the people who have joined online. The first one, I think, is because in our first presentation on the economy, we had inflation by sector, like transport, gas, F&B, food, etc. So the question here is, do we have construction material inflation indexes prepared? If so, what are they? That's from Reza and a few people here. I'll have to direct that question towards Ranjith. Ranjith, is there a construction sector specific inflation index? If so, can you share anything on it?
Yes, construction sector material prices have gone up by average 200%. If I take few items, in December 2021, what was cement bag was 850, 900 rupees. Today it's about 3,200, which is more than 300%. And if you take it, the diesel petrol also has gone up nearly 200%. And the steel very much more than 300%. And finally, it's not material, even the construction sector borrowing money, the lending rate by the banks also have gone up by 8-9% to 22-23%. That is also about 200-300%. So all that has gone directly due to the floating of the dollar, which now they have realized what they didn't do sometimes back, they should have done early. But only thing for the real estate, I could say one thing. There are, in the condominium, especially apartment, there are at least few thousands are available in the market, high end and the middle level, which they have spent money in rupees about 6 months back. And most of these apartments, when I see the valuation, still they have increased by, not by this 200, 300%. They have increased, but not by that margin, because they have spent actually in rupees much lesser value. So those apartments now in the market with about 25 to 30, 40% increase only. But once these apartments are sold, either in the secondary market or the first as brand new, then only one will realize, especially the property developers, with the land value and actual material value and all other machinery equipment value in rupees, right? The selling value, marketable value will be very high. So that I should suggest any interested parties, those who are going to invest or going to live in that, this is the best period to do that with the apartment or the other real estate properties, because all the materials have gone. Then the second thing is, I feel definitely once this political stability is over, because we never felt about the dollars the way that construction industry people, we bought a lot of materials very freely, just like we are having dollars. We never felt that the dollar is a very important commodity in the construction sector when we spend money. But now only we realize that how the dollar has played all over. But sorry to say, we are not the policymakers or the regulators of that particular commodity. So today we are in trouble definitely with this. But in time to come, I think with these restrictions, definitely our geographical location and our tropical climate and various other assets we have, Sri Lanka will be a best destiny for anyone to invest if all these little things, political stability and other things, if they straight it out. I, not as a Sri Lankan, but as a human, I feel this is the best place out of very few places in the world that you can settle with. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranjith. Just a little follow-up question. There's Vinod Kumar and several others have asked if, well, they've asked what is the construction cost for semi-luxury, etc. So you said that 200% is the inflation rate. Can we assume that it's increased by 200%, the cost of construction as a whole?
No, the construction cost for semi-luxury will be varied from construction cost. I'm talking, that is mean not the land cost, not the finance cost, okay? And not the property developers' profits and overheads. Just the construction cost today on the gross area, it will be still around $80 to $90 per square foot.
Okay.
But that would have gone up by 5%, if at all, because of the shipping and other arrangement, maximum
Right.
10%. But in rupee value, it has gone up fairly big sum, because what was about 180, 190 rupees, now it is 370 rupees. So that's about, in a rupee value, it has gone up very high.
Absolutely, yeah, because of the pegging, which no one can quite understand why it was done. Thank you, Ranjith.
And just to add on to that,
Yes, Minoli.
now from January, the depreciation, there was a 75% depreciation today, and the rupee was pegged last month to about 350. That sort of amount. So if they remove that peg again, there's a slight peg there, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think some people need to mute because it's this feedback. Yasas and Yasas. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So last month actually there was a peg at 350 to the rupee. So I think to the dollar. So I think if that is by any chance taken out, we'll see the depreciation going very much further. So built in real estate, you need to hold on to it. So I think that is, if you are an investor, that this is the best time, like Ranjith said, to get in.
Thank you, Minoli. Yes, and if you're already in, it's even better, I suppose. There are more questions on this regarding the solutions for investors who are ready to invest in US dollars. What can they expect in return? Who would like to take that one? So people who are ready to invest in property, say if you're working and earning dollars or pounds or euros, that dream villa on the beach is that much more affordable.
Roshan, shall I
yeah.
take that?
Please, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Roshan, now I think a lot of the home owners or land property owners have not realized the depreciation, all that concept, and some of the pricings are still in the the old pricing. So now is the best time to get in. I mean, with your dollars, you can buy a a very good plot of beach land or whatever.
Probably not my dollars, but somebody out there. Okay, anyone else on that one?
If I may
Yes.
add something, Roshan,
Nirmal.
I think we need to look at it from a more holistic point of view. Because if you are a property seller, at the moment, if you are leveraged on your normal businesses and if you have 20-25% interest that you will have to pay, you will want to sell your property rather than holding because of various challenges there.
Yes.
But I do admit on the fact that because of the currency depreciation, whether you're diaspora or whether you're an international investor, Sri Lankan property is now giving you decent returns in comparison to what they will get in the region. And also, when you really look at it from an asset class perspective also, it is giving you better returns in comparison to the volatility. Also, I think there was a question also in the chat group. The Sri Lankan government, just before we got into majority of this turmoil, introduced the Golden Paradise scheme. I think $100,000 for a 10-year residency visa and $75,000 if you invest in property in the suburbs. Now, these incentives are definitely going to help international investors because we've seen that happening in many other parts of the world. Now, if we can also get together collectively alongside political stability and look at some very special incentives for retirement living, for the healthcare sector, for medical tourism, and also the commercial real estate. Now, see, end of the day, Hiroshini will also agree with me. As a commercial real estate player, you look at discounted cash flows once your capital is invested and so forth. Now, what are some of the incentives that from a tax perspective, not at the early stage, but maybe from year 5 to 10, that commercial real estate players can get in for enhancing their property? Because more often than not in Sri Lanka, until about 10 years, commercial players really do not try to improve on the asset. But if you can encourage that, and also the REITs getting into full expedited mode, because of course, even though it was announced, nobody really got into it with the pandemic and so forth. That will allow a different type of class of investors to come in. And these will all provide greater incentives than in the region to own property. And I think that would be a key opportunity, definitely going to come in. But in the medium term, definitely these interest rates will have to change if the domestic players are to be really serious on it. Otherwise, there's going to be a real ripple effect as a result of these interest rates.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmal. Yes. Just to follow up on that, now somebody, Chanaka, has pointed out that HCL has taken 75% of the floor area of cinnamon.
That's right.
Hiroshini has identified the problems, but I think Nirmal has also provided some opportunities. So maybe I should ask this from Hiroshini. Surely the largest hurdles are extremely short term, and the long term landscape remains a good place. The wicket is still in good shape, and once this storm passes, then surely there will be opportunities like that.
Yes, definitely. I think I think again it's I think when we were talking about the pandemic, I think all of us were talking about resilience. So I think again we are back to square one, where I think we need to be resilient during this probably I think the critical period is 6 to 9 months. I think if we can get through that and then stabilize ourselves, definitely we should be able to. But the other main factor I think we need to keep in mind also is the brain drain that is going to that is very significantly happening now, because I think the younger generation are not patient enough, and you can't actually blame them either, because if you see there is a lot of applications going through, and you see even in corporates people are migrating for or even even if it's for the close by because they feel that it's much greener there than here. So now HCL is a company who I think is looking to have more Sri Lankan manpower or resources in their operation. That is why they are setting up. And I think recently EY also set up a similar segment at WTC, if I'm not mistaken.
Mireka.
So, right, Mireka, right, yes. So, things like that are done specifically targeting the Sri Lankan human resource factor. But if we don't have that, then it's again going to be difficult. So I think I think the major thing is that we really need to get this sorted fast, so that we don't lose all the capable people that we have here.
If I may add something on that, Roshan, just a slightly different perspective, and I fully agree from a nationalistic perspective, we need to, as much as possible, stop the brain drain and get the brain gain back, and we need to look at certain incentives. But also, I think as a nation, we need to be brutally honest here. For far too often, we've tried to stifle competition. And this might be a good opportunity for us to encourage foreign labor and talent also to this country, just like how Singapore, Dubai has also benefited. Of course, we need to come up with certain checks and balances on that. But I saw one of the leading entrepreneurs in the country in a 12-point action plan that he has recommended, also mentioned about having student visas and encouraging overseas students to come into Sri Lanka. And this is going to be a definitely positive factor. If you take countries like UK, student accommodation is a different asset class altogether. There are REITs operating for student accommodation as well. So I think we might have to look into that also in the short to medium term, because end of the day, with globalization, we are just becoming one country rather than one world, and we might have great opportunities of collaborating. So the other thing is, I think all of you all might agree, we also have a generational gap here, unfortunately, compared with the previous generation. The hard-working work ethic, unfortunately, is also lacking in the present generation. And that's with the technology domain, and what they are encouraged is slightly different to what we are a little bit used to. So I think we might be able to nullify that, but nevertheless, retaining our people will be fundamental, but there might also be other opportunities for us to increase the value chain by increasing our competitiveness index.
Yes, Nirmal, excellent. Very valid and optimistic as well. I think in the medium term, and if that does kick off, that would be an excellent opportunity to leverage on.
Roshan, can I add to that as well? I also think on the same terms as Dr. Nirmal, if our, a lot of people see a greener pasture out there, then we also have to find out people who see that way, and then, encourage that, which we haven't done. I mean, obviously now people will, see, have a second thought of coming here, but we should have done that. Right, we shouldn't have stopped international, the universities and all those health tourism should have been there. Now Peradeniya is such a nice place, it could have attracted a lot of international students. I studied in Australia and Hong Kong, and I think Sri Lanka is much better than any of these countries. So we have the natural resources, the beauty, we can turn around. And the positive aspect is now people are realizing there should be economic reforms, and now we have seen that there are certain things like, the very inefficient SOEs are trying to be privatized or to that effect. If that happens, I think it will be a much radical change than it was ever before. So you have to see that positive angle as well in what these reforms may bring about. So that is.
Thank you, Minoli. It's a very good point, because a lot of the international media has focused on the fact that Sri Lanka is not the only country going through this. There are a lot of emerging economies. So Sri Lanka has been described as the canary in the cage, like the first to drop dead when there is a toxic gases in the environment, with the mining. So that's basically the idea that there are actually a number of emerging economies who may experience this, and I've just seen with my own eyes, there are actually fuel queues in the UK as well. Our family in the US say that the cost of living is at a historic high. I think inflation is at a 20-30-year high. So, if professionals are thinking of leaving to, so-called greener pastures, I think they should also get a reality check, that a lot of their professional learning and qualifications may be thrown out of the window, and they may be forced to do, say, for example, manual work. So I agree with what you guys have said there. I think people should think about it very carefully. There is a flip side to it, of course. All the people who've dedicated their lives, sacrificed time with their family, and earn overseas to come and retire here, and find that comfort that they were seeking is no longer there. That itself is tragic and perhaps criminal, and that is a different issue. I think I'll stop there, because we're trying to find solutions. There are a lot of questions asking about the price of a square foot apartment in the next generation. I'm going to ask that to Yasas, but before I go to Yasas, who also claims to have all the solutions, can Jules tell us if the Sri Lankan apartments are competitive in the region, based on your experience here?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, if we draw parallels across most of the markets where we operate on the awards, and when we come to the international level, and Nirmal will back this up, when we're looking at properties across the region, the winners from Sri Lanka over the years have been equally at a standard that we've expected to see from other countries, and affordable to boot, right? So, and then you have the other advantage of the environment that they come with, and the access to the environment that they come with. So I think it's a holistic view from an international investor's point of view. And interesting what Minoli was saying about when you mentioned studying in Australia. I mean, I've just been in Melbourne last week to launch the awards in Australia, and they have seen a massive return of the international student population ever since they opened up. They opened up Australia like a month ago, very recently. They were very, very slow to open up, but as soon as they did, they were the first people to come back. And and already there's new properties launching for student accommodation, international student accommodation, etc. So I think, yeah, you're right to say that those kind of opportunities, I think the whole world, and specifically the region, is assessing how to return to the market, right, post-pandemic. And it's more extreme in Sri Lanka because you have double challenges. You have the economic challenges and returning from the pandemic. But at the same time, it's still a question of how to come back, how to bounce back, and what will be, you know, the key areas that appeal to people on a global level. And I think that I've seen that in a lot of other countries. People are reassessing how they look at work, how they look at, you know, residential experience. You know, where do I live now? I need air. I need access to nature. You know, the housing development has become very, very popular now, moving away from condos, actually. You know, people are looking for houses. They want gardens. They want to be able to go outside. So, I mean, there's a lot of reassessment going on generally in the markets, which I think, you know, as you're suggesting with Sri Lanka, is the same, essentially the same approach, is how do we come back from this? I think that's definitely a competitive market as it is, but, you know, already with advantages that others don't have. So, from my perspective.
Thank you, Jules. Actually, the trend towards gated community has been observed in the last couple of years here as well, that people want gardens and a kind of a community living. The apartment demand hasn't gone away, but I think in the suburbs, certainly that garden and a gated living concept. And yeah, and I just saw in the news today that apparently Sri Lanka, the population is aging at such a level that the economy won't recover before the population ages, which is mind-boggling to me, because I can't imagine the population getting younger by the time the economy comes, because that would go against nature and science. So, but the idea of importing youth and promoting education, as the panelists have said, is an excellent one. If we are going to take a few pointers at the end of this session, then we can bullet point some of these ideas and maybe pass them on to policymakers. I'm going to ask this question to Yasas. So what is the price and availability of semi-luxury residential units? And could you share some more of your thoughts on what you said about that, that you do have the solution to the issues faced? I think a lot of people are waiting to hear that.
Yeah, thank you, Roshan. And now I would say if we want to achieve something different, we need to do something different. So this is been like a tough time that we all are undergoing, but we are threshold of a very good opportunity. As a, you know, I mean, all the real estate market in Sri Lanka now, if we can sort these small issues, in a like a reasonable time. So we are threshold of a very good opportunity in the terms of the markets, even in Sri Lanka, as well as the Sri Lankan market, as well as the foreign market. So I just want to add a few thoughts. Now, you know, recently now we encountered very high price hikes. As an example, compared to before and after March 10, the price of cement has been increased nearly by 95%, and steel by 115%, and concrete by 90%. So that means after March 20. So this was very high. And I would say now this is not a time at which that people should secure profits. This is a time at which that we all should think about way of survival. So if I would request from material suppliers, now as an example, a certain material supplier, I'm pretty sure that in this context, he's get hit. Say if he's hit by 40%, he make an increase of 85% or even more. So that is why we are now feeling now some of these items been going very high, and now people can't afford. People stop construction now. They are like a supply and demand, and then they are reducing the price. So then we realize that their increase is very unrealistic. So if they don't realize that, now we all are in the same industry. if we don't realize that, we should go this journey together. So this we will take a lot of time to heal this problem. So that is one aspect of it. Other one is now we have to find ways and means to avoid our dependency. As an example, Mr. Gunatilleke very clearly said nearly 60 to 70% of a material has a link in dollar terms, like importation. So we need to find ways and means, even like it is not that, we do the same thing with different terms, but, it's something we can come up with a different solution to avoid our dependency. We use some natural resources and all that, and we need to cater something differently for the market to capture the demand. So value innovation is somewhat that we can propose. That means pursue differentiation and low cost at the same time and offer innovative solutions at affordable prices. Because we know that as the present context, the consumers, the customers are also in trouble. So if we don't customer centric in terms of our designs, so then who are going to buy our products? That's a problem. So then we have to be 100% customer centric when we put our designs, and also we need to think about the affordability focus. And also now, as an example, now electricity bills are going sky high, and then think about ways and means of reducing the energy consumption, use natural resources and all that plugged into the designs to come up with very affordable solutions. And then other one is, as an example, now if we take the construction material, now some items are in a scarcity. So what we try to do is we need to get the best value of those materials. So now circular economy principles that we can employ, and we can reduce the waste to minimum. And also now we can think about like process enhancements. We call like business process re-engineering to optimize our cost. And other fact is the fact that we don't realize most. And if you take overhead cost from the total P&L, it's very high amount. So that means, as an example, if a project is planned for 30 months, if we can expedite the schedule and do it by 25 months, it's a huge saving that we can pass down back to the consumers, and we can take a marketing advantage by completing this. Because now, as an example, now a lot of construction companies, they stop construction that we have a lot of labor and a lot of talent has been idle. So that if we can put all those things and we can reduce the schedule, we can expedite the schedules and reduce the overhead costs. And other thing is like the supply chain optimization strategies that we can focus on, like backward and forward integrations. As an example, if construction site can accommodate concrete manufacturing itself, so that it avoid the dependency, so that they can go with cement block manufacturing the site, so that it reduce the dependency, and also that backward integration helps the construction to smoothing, and then reduce the cost much. Because we try to find ways and means. It should be a 300-degree approach to reduce the cost and offer something better for the affordable for the customers. And then other factors, if you really see now, the finance cost is was nearly around 10 to 12% of a P&L. But it has now been increased almost double. So with that lending rates, very few can construct, and then we are contributing much more to the deficit of housing deficit in Sri Lanka. As I clearly said, now if we need 100,000 units to be built in, but though we are doing it 25,000, so definitely for another 2 to 3 years down the line, people has to wait for queues to buy a house, definitely. So we need to avoid happening that. So now Other important thing is like now we have seen some positives of opening up the doors for foreigners to buying our apartments and houses, and that may be a good initiative, and then we have to encourage them more because they are coming with dollars, and it will heal the situation much better, because now most of the sophisticated or high level tier 1 they can easily afford. And now last but not least, I put that because now we have to focus on corrective action rather than correction, because throughout the years we've been identified, or we've been seen all the time when we make an error, we identify that error and do the correction. So we don't think about the root cause. So if we don't correct the root cause, the error will be repeating, and then we have to repeatedly correct the error. So now we have to think we have to take it as a good learning curve and good lesson for us to come out of the situation, and we need to think about the root cause and deep dive into the problem, and then to come up with a corrective action rather than a correction for all these issues. And if we do that, I'm pretty sure we are threshold of a very good opportunity in terms of residential and commercial real estates, and we hope so. And with that, I'm concluding this session. Thank you, Roshan.
Excellent, Yasas. Actually, a lot of that made such amazing sense to me, particularly the circular economy, because unfortunately for me, I was caught up in the middle of a personal renovation when cement ran out, and then everything else literally, went for a 6. But fortunately for me, some family has very kindly offered that one of their old, Walawers, traditional village house that is quite derelict now. They've offered that I could take things off there. So I myself am actually having to recycle construction material in order to renovate a small project that I'm doing. So like that, you mentioned that marketing costs would be lower because the demand would be so high, because literally there'll be queues. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with many solutions which we can probably implement, backward linkages. Right, we really wanted, like 35 minutes over time. So I'm going to have to answer some of those questions by email. The team will get back to you on that, the research team. So I'm going to give the mic over for everyone to perhaps suggest 1 or 2 maximum in minutes, what you feel, how you feel we can still come out of it, and what message you might have to policymakers in terms of what can be done. I think the concern is certainly the short term, and if we manage the short term effectively and intelligently, we would be able to navigate through as an industry, and of course we sit within the economic framework of everything that affects us. So if you were to suggest a couple of things that policymakers can take on board, and maybe even some advice for investors, people already invested, please, I'm going to ask everyone to spend 1 to 2 minutes on that, starting with Jules. You have to unmute.
I have to unmute, yeah. I wasn't
Yes.
expecting you to be starting with me.
Your turn.
Thank you. I think all I can do is repeat what I've said before, that, in times of crisis, investors often return to bricks and mortar. And as we've heard today, there's a huge undersupply of residential properties over the coming years, not only in Sri Lanka, but in many economies. And I think that although that presents a challenge, it also presents a huge opportunity. And it takes a long-term view to really see how you can create an environment of recovery that encourages international investment, that responds to the new way of living post-pandemic, And that really leverages all the advantages and assets that Sri Lanka has already to ensure that it appeals to investors going forward as things recover. So I would just say property is one of the core ways in which an economy can recover, and having that asset already in place and is definitely an advantage that needs to be fully recognized.
Thank you, Jules. Yes, opportunity coming from a new post-pandemic world where things are slightly different, and there are opportunities there, absolutely, if I've got that correctly.
Yeah.
Dr. Nirmal, over to you. What would be your key message?
No, I think from a policymaker perspective, there is no doubt that they need to get their act together and collectively work towards the country as opposed to their own agenda. Now, assuming that that comes into place, I think we need to be very pragmatic in the solution, and I think we need to come up with policies which are very commercially oriented, which are very long-term oriented. So classic example, if construction costs are going up in the foreseeable future and we require B or C grade buildings, so can we look at underutilized government buildings, look at private-public partnerships, and convert those into co-working spaces and buildings that can bring in some economic return? Because you might just need to do a little bit of facade and interior, you don't need to do the entire brick and mortar. And we need to also realize that when you're looking at the residential or the real estate sector in the market, it should be looked at isolation. For far too often, we are looking at it in a very isolated perspective. We need to have policy. We need to encourage tourism. We need to have comparative and competitive investment policies and incentives so that we can bring in more and more investors. We need to again relook at our first home buyers, what type of incentive we can give them. That might also be a way of encouraging the brain drain that we are talking about. What specific incentives we can give the diaspora? Can we look at longer term benefits for them? So all of these need to be looked into in a particular manner if we are to really come out of this in an expedited mode. But having said that, I'm a very firm believer that storms do not continue and it's not perpetual. I think our nationality should be renamed as resilience, as opposed to Sri Lankan, because it seems like this is the first thing that comes to the mind of each and every Sri Lankan whenever we are in a calamity. So I think that resilience will take us there. But one of the ways of how we can do that is if we are united as humans, united as entrepreneurs, and united as real estate professionals and construction industry professionals. Because we are fighting this fight together. There is no room for isolation or myopic thinking. If we can get that into perspective, I think we'll see light at the end of the tunnel much more faster than expected. But Sri Lanka can, Sri Lanka will, and Sri Lanka should. This is in my opinion, Rushad.
Excellent, Dr. Nirmal, very positive message. And yes, I've been hearing this word resilience now for 20 years since I first came to Sri Lanka. So, and it is definitely a hallmark of the character of the nation for sure. Thank you for that. And I love the comment about the government buildings as well, that to pick up the slack. And then that too is, of course, prime real estate. Over to you, Minoli. A quick couple of words from you. Your concluding remarks, please.
I think you're on mute still, Minoli. Sorry.
I agree with Nirmal. Actually, we are one of the largest commercial real estate, renters. So we actually do a lot of the like OGF, Mireka, WTC. We put a lot of the clients. So we actually know that there are like there will be a shortage very soon. I feel more than. Roshan, you said in about 2 years, I feel within the next year, we'll see a shortage in tier 1 and tier 2, tier 1 residential as well as commercial A-grade spaces. it will probably be taken, because there are, in my transactional one, we've got over 100,000 just waiting, just looking at, if there is stability. As soon as there's stability, they're going, right? So this is what I really think. And also, like I told before, the government is taking its steps now. I think they know that, things have to be done. They have to privatize the very inefficient SOEs, which have never been done before. And then a lot of our forex depletion is from the importations. We are very dependent on importations, especially fuel. And we have one of the worst public transport systems. So I think that also has been is getting addressed with a lot of pressure. And also renewable forms of energy has been addressed. So I think those economic stability, if it comes in, we have a golden opportunity for real estate again. So I feel, I don't know if anyone knew, but the foreign minister had announced they're going to print over 1 trillion rupees in the next coming months. So it will start from June. I feel around 200 billion will be printed around that time. So our depreciation will keep on going up, as I feel. So I feel Sri Lanka will be, can come out of this in the long term, because we see that, there is now shortage of, 2 years ago, a lot of people were saying there's a oversupply of residential and commercial real estate. Now I'm saying that it will be a shortage very, very soon, because cost of construction, like Ranjith and Yasas was saying, is very, very high. And I don't see it coming the next few months as well, because of the global recession and the global prices going up because of the Ukraine-Russian war.
Thank you, Minoli. A very realistic yet optimistic message from you. Thank you for that. Mr. Ranjith, your turn. How would you sum it up?
Yes, a few minutes. You started with how do you suggest as a conclusion or our final words as the policies are concerned. So that's a good. Today the construction industry suffer because the policymakers have not done their part correctly. I don't want to have a post-mortem, but I want to go to the history. But what I say is that is correct. But immediately, I'm not talking about politics, but the president has accepted certain decisions that are taken by him, like tax cut and the introduction of organic fertilizer are mistakes, so that policymakers have done some mistakes in the past, and finally it has boiled down to the apartment developers or the construction industry people to suffer. So what I say is, at this moment, they should not worry about the private sector. Private sector will not do anything without proper feasibility study. But if I suggest for the policymakers, for the public sector investments, whether it's the infrastructure or the other development, town development or the urban development or whatever thing, they shall do proper feasibility studies. I can tell very well the present public investment in the country, other than few World Bank or the Asian ADB projects, realistic feasibility studies done on the public sector investment is definitely not even 10% or 15%. Very sorry to say this. Private sector by themselves, they do a lot of studies, but not the public sector. Today, because of that, we have a huge problem. If you get that discipline in place, especially in the public sector, then if you practice whatever the present law of this country properly, I don't think that we should bother about the dollar, or where the dollar going to flow, where the tourism going to flow, where the agriculture going to come up. All those things are automatic. It will flow that it wants inwards to the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjith. Excellent. Yes, very real and practical conclusion. And let's hope the sense goes through to the public sector. Hiroshini, a couple of quick words from you, please.
So I think which is affecting mostly the commercial sector would be the businesses that would be looking to set up in Colombo and in Sri Lanka. So I think the expectation is the policymakers would get their act together, as everyone is saying, so that we would have the investors coming in, and so that we as Ranjith says, then we really don't need to worry about how things are going to happen, because it's the normal economic cycle that will happen. But adding on to, I think when we talk about Sri Lankans, we say we are a resilient bunch. But at the same time, I think we also a set of people who has a lot of sense of humor. I think we see the best in everything. I think that is what makes us go on. And I think with that sentiment of resilience and the ability to handle any situation, we will come out of this. And I just hope that it's sooner than later.
Thank you, Roshini, and a most resilient statement. Thank you. Over to you, Yasas. Please, a couple of words from you.
Actually, Roshan, now in this situation, we all should get together and keep our head forward to think about how we can come out from this situation. And we need to have a holistic approach. It's like a 300-degree approach. Now, certain economic reforms need to be done soon, and we need to have a very the political stability, and that is the key for anything happening to that. And then we should not forget that now if you take the Sri Lankan real estate sector, commercial real estate and residential real estate, it's a booming industry, and the industry is trapped or bottlenecked through this crisis. So we should not let to be down, and we all should get together and fix these problems and the strategies that we have pointed to focusing on the residential real estate sector and the constructions, that some of things can be done easily and some of the things cannot be done easily, but we need to do something different if we want to achieve something different, that for sure. And also I just want to point out the fact that now we actually as a nation, now we have to think about think outside from the box. I mean, some of the solutions may not arrive easily, and we have to work hard to get our motherland back on track, and then we can spearhead, or we can guarantee that our real estate sector will be put on the track back again. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasas. Yeah, actually, there are more questions coming in, particularly saying that so long as we have dishonest politicians, nothing will change. So I think, speaking for myself on that one, I've always taken the attitude that, we had the blinkers. I've not looked at politics or looked at what's going on, but now we've kind of opened our eyes. What we do have to be aware of what the government and politicians do, so that that we have a better standard of people making decisions for us, because we do not operate in a cocoon, or we're not isolated. What happens in the economy as a whole directly impacts us, and that's what we've seen now. It's not the private companies or the big companies or the property developers who've messed up. They haven't gone bankrupt, but the government going bankrupt affects all of us. So that wake-up call, and to be honest, I have never even dreamed that people in Sri Lanka would go out on the streets like they did, march, stand up, speak without fear, and unite across race, age, religion, everything. That has been amazing. So I personally believe there is a lot of hope, and something positive will emerge out of this dark hour. Thank you to all of you. This has been an amazing focus group discussion. So much stimulation and stimulating ideas. I think Jules mentioned JV is a good time to maybe JV with foreign entities who can maybe help ease the critical problem is to get imports down. So maybe it's a great time for the local developers to JV with people who can help Sri Lanka to source imports, lower marketing costs, make use of government buildings that are idle, circular economy. So many great ideas. After this FGD, we'll try and put a few bullet points and circulate that with everybody, and perhaps send it on to somebody in power, and perhaps they'll listen to us. So we live in hope. Thank you to all of you for taking the time out and helping us and helping the people who are listening. And thank you to Team RIU for their hard work behind the scenes. And thank you for the people who've joined in online. And we've gone approximately 1 hour over schedule, I suppose. That's the good testament to the fact that it has been an engaging and stimulating discussion. So as I say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So I wish you all the best in making it through. I'm sure we will. And thank you once again.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. Thanks, Roshan.